I apologize. I am now recording as a backup on the Zoom application as well. Again, this is Monday, March 30th at 7:02 p.m. The School Committee of the Whole for Beverly. We are meeting based on guidance from Governor Baker's office that a quorum and the chair need not be physically present during this unprecedented time. We will have our best effort to include the public. Okay, there's someone that keeps unmuting. I don't really know. We will try that one more time, or I might have to take the ability for you to unmute yourselves away. So as I was saying, we don't need to be physically present, but we'll have our best effort to include the public, as well as make recordings available as soon as humanly possible. We are trying the software that is available freely to the educational groups, and we're going to evaluate our best options going forward.
Madam Chair, I'm
yes.
apologizing. It is Dr. Churocek that continues to unmute, and she's unmuting to try to say that she cannot hear you.
Okay.
I'm gonna advise her to drop out and come back in. Sue,
okay.
Can you hear me?
I will try to contact her. Let's see. Okay, I think she's listened to that advice. Hopefully people have had the opportunity to get a headset. It does prevent that feedback loop that can occur when the speakers on the computer decide to feed right back into the microphone. Okay, well, while Dr. Churocek is figuring out that technical glitch, I first would like to ask that we join together in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be a technical challenge, I am sure. But if you can see the flag and you're so inclined, Mr. Milady, if you want to come off mute and lead us in the pledge, I would appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for that. Our first order of business this evening, and let me share our agenda with everyone. Okay, it's not letting me share. Let's try again. We have our agenda. Our first order of business is the approval of meeting records. We've had 2 meetings since we had the opportunity to approve meeting records. Our first are the March 4th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting records. I'd entertain a motion to approve. You need to come off mute. If
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milady and Ms. Ferretti. I got those. I will have to do a roll call vote since we are doing remote participation. If you're not speaking right now, if you could mute, I will be calling on Ms. Visnick first. Are you okay with the March 4th, 2020 meeting minutes?
I'm sorry, Rachel. Who'd you call on first?
You.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Milady?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho? I'm not seeing the camera, so I'm going to stop my share so I have my cameras back. Do you have a thumbs up there? Okay, there's a yes. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Okay, and myself, yes, Rachel Abel. Okay, we also have the meeting records from our first remote participation meeting, which was on March 18th, 2020. Again, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting records.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Do I have a second? And I have Kim Coelho as a second. Thank you very much. We're going to do a roll call vote again. Ms. Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Karen Robinson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Kim Coelho? I see a thumbs up. John Mulady?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Cahill, I think you were absent. I'm not sure if you watched the broadcast. Abstain.
No, I was not in attendance, so I shouldn't vote. Thanks.
Okay, abstain, and myself, yes. Thank you very much. Now, I do quickly want to just run down a roll call of who's attending. I realize we have a number of people that have joined on the line. So for the school committee, we are all in attendance. We have Ms. Ferretti, Ms. Robinson, Ms. Coelho, Ms. Visnick, Mr. Mulady, Mayor Cahill, and Rachel Abel. We are also joined by Dr. Sue Chirocek. Looking for Jean Sherburne. There's so many people on my screen right now. I apologize.
I'm here.
You are, thank you. Ms. Beth Splansky, John Harmond, and Dorothy Flaherty, our assistant superintendent. We're also joined by a number of the elementary school principals. I see Ms. Gabrielle Montevecchi, Dr. Deborah Lay, Ms. Julie Smith, Ms. Erin Brown. Do I see Lisa Oliver? I believe I saw you accept, but I can't see you on my screen right now.
I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you. Okay, let's see. We have our athletic director, Dan Keefe, joining us on the line. We have Julia Brotherton from BTA and one of our high school teachers joining us. We also have the Director of Food Services, Christina Leal, joining us. Ms. Visnick, oh, our Assistant Principal, Mark Thomas, is joining us. Our Principal of the high school, Betty Taylor. I'm sorry, this is not my usual laptop. We have our Assistant Principal, Terry Conant, joining us from the middle school.
Director of Transportation.
Dana Krushenk, thank you very much for joining us. Is there anyone that I've missed? I apologize. There's such a long list.
Donna Bergeron is on attendance too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bergeron, for keeping us all organized and in order too. Okay, so with that, I think we've made note of all those in attendance. We've troubleshot some of our technical challenges, and we are ready to move on to our next agenda item. Agenda item number 3 are items by consensus. These are listed on our agenda this evening. I wanted to remind folks that we had delayed our March meeting, and we had a number of warrants that were intended to be approved the evening of our semifinal basketball tournament. And we do need to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's. To that end, we'd like to play some catch up. Additionally, a couple additional warrants had been approved by a majority of the school committee members and forwarded along to City Hall for prompt payment to our vendors. What we are looking for this evening, and this sort of goes hand in glove with a topic that we'll cover later on our agenda, is for the approval of these warrants listed A through G to be approved. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick, and I see
Second.
Is that Kelly? I saw
It is. Yeah, second.
Okay, and Kelly Ferretti is seconded. So the amounts are listed on our agenda. We're not going to repeat them all right now, but we will take a roll call vote. So the warrants as outlined A through J on the agenda, motion to approve by Ms. Visnick, a second by Kelly Ferretti, and I will call the roll. Mr. John Mulady.
Yes.
Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
Thank you. Rachel Abel, yes. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
and Ms. Coelho. Thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. When I don't hear it, I have to look on the screen. Well, by a motion of 7-0, the warrants that we had in front of us have been passed. Now that we've got some of the housekeeping taken care of for the moment, we will switch over to Dr. Chirocek, where she will give us an update on a number of topics. And I believe you should be able to share your PowerPoint. If not, let me know and I will share from here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we
I
can.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
And now do you have the, there you go. All right, now you can see the report too?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So sorry, and I again have put it together in a, utilizing Google Slides to just sort of help me, in terms of organizing the presentation, considering that we're on the Zoom. And so once again, I kind of have started with what an overview. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to have a little discussion about the budget probably not what we typically talk about, but we wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of the closure on the FY20 budget, and also a brief peek at the FY21 where we are. We wanted to take a look at our school choice discussion, and that has an action item, thinking about school choice for next year. We wanted to talk a little bit about the Student Opportunity Act plan, and as well as the extended closure. So I'll just sort of walk us through, and you can stop me at any time along the way. So I wanted to begin by talking about the impact of the closure on FY20. Here we are. This is unprecedented times and uncharted waters, whatever. There's a million ways we can describe it, but a place we've probably never been before. And one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that we had the opportunity to share with you, what we anticipated as things that you would want to have on your radar as school committee, and understanding, what's coming. So first of all, and this is not set in stone, but we have been, it has been said to us that we, can anticipate that there won't be any pulling back of any of our Chapter 70 or the state or federal funding as a result of this as of right now. I'm just saying that to start off with the positive, because I'm hoping that stays true. But we do have some areas that we want to discuss with you that are happening and ongoing that we felt important to share. So the cabinet worked together this morning to kind of come up with a list of things in terms of what are the impacts in terms of revenues and then in terms of expenses. So I'll start with revenues. Typically from March 13th through at least May 4th, if not later, there are a lot of things money that we would have collected that we were anticipating using in our FY20 budget. So here, I just wanted to share a few items that we have on our radar that we're watching. So first of all, the food service revolving account. There are lots of paid meals and a la carte items that we get income from that we would have been anticipating and using for our food service program. That being said, we're not serving meals in the amounts that we are too. So we didn't put a number to that because it's really hard to determine. Building rental revolving, we would have anticipated collecting $77,000 if we had between now and June 30th. And if we remain closed, that's some revolving revenue that we won't be seeing. There's a Medicaid revenue loss if we're not providing services. So we're not going to be able to claim some Medicaid funds that we sometimes do. And then, and we will get to this later in the meeting. Rachel has it on her report, but there's the question of tuition for kindergarten and preschool and for transportation, as we're not in session right now. And so that's a discussion. And Jean did the tally on that. And there's more numbers further on, but that the total amount from now till the end of the year would be $242,000. So we sort of wanted to put on your radar items that, revenues that we would normally be anticipating coming in, and as well as some expenses that we're incurring as the result of the closure. So again, the food service, if there are costs over the revenues received, those are expenses that we weren't anticipating. We've seen some unanticipated unemployment costs, starting with if we had a former employee liability, someone that had worked for us, left for another job, doesn't have that job as the result of the closure. When they go to make their claim, they claim it comes to us as the former employer. We also have a situation where employees can claim unemployment if they have reduction of hours. So that's another cost. We have the cost of cleaning the buildings. Those last 2 weeks before we did close, we were very aggressive trying to keep our children safe in making sure that we were cleaning our buildings and utilizing a service to come in and do that for us. And we added to that service classrooms and bathrooms in some areas that weren't typically budgeted for. There's the idea of emergency paid leave, which is coming out. And again, that's something that we're not sure what impact that will have and what we'll see in terms of our employees. And then finally, one expense, it won't be that great, but if we do serve meals during April vacation, we can anticipate the cost of those workers during April vacation, because if we're not in session, they don't typically work. So that was just another expense. So we sort of felt it was important to just kind of point it out to all of you to keep it on your radar as we go. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay, I'll keep going. The next thing is, this is a larger discussion, I think, or at least something to make you aware of. These are topics that all of the districts all over the Commonwealth are talking about. We're getting lots of guidance from the state and guidance from the commissioner around what they would hope that we would do. But in the end, these are local decisions. So that being the case, I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of the conversations and discussions that were going on. So there's a lot of conversations about vendor payments. It is the Department of Ed's recommendation that we continue to make our payments. Included in those are our out-of-district placement for students. So public day students, private day students, and residential students. I will say, and I want to be clear, both our public day and private day service partners are providing remote services in the same manner that we are. I don't know if it's exactly the same because we have made up our own remote learning platform, but they are being told to provide services to the students that attend their collaboratives or their private schools in the same manner that we are. And then in terms of residential, only one of the facilities is closed, and that's Perkins. However, I believe there's some question about the day services that are going on. They're also going to be asked to provide some remote services for that as well. So that's one question. It's my recommendation that we continue our vendor payments. I know Bethany's concerned. One of the problems that we have is if we were to discontinue our payments of our vendors, we would lose our spots for our kids. And we have 100 kids that are counting on those spots when we do come back to school. So that's just a topic that's out there. And then the other one is the same one we talked about at the last meeting. We talked about hourly wages, and you had voted to make sure that we continued paying the base pay for hourly wages through April 6th at the time. I just think putting it out there that, we have now the closure has been extended to May 4th. And so it's on the docket again. I will tell you that we're working, we would recommend to continue paying them. We're providing professional development opportunities to them during this closure at time. And mainly the employees that involves would be the transportation, cafeteria, crossing guards, and lunch monitors. So I can pause there if you have some questions. Oh, I lost my voice again.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm
That
not
was me
seeing.
again. I thought I went, oh no, I went down again.
I had turned my video off since I learned a lesson last time that the video focus kept going on me during the recording. So I don't see any hands up, Ms. Visnick. You can help keep me honest. I don't see any hands up at this point.
I don't either.
Okay. So please go, Dr.
Okay.
Churchak.
All right. So, I mean, there really, I don't know necessarily action items within those. I mean, I think we're going to keep our eye on those hourly wages as we go. You did take action on that the last time. So these are really items for you to keep in mind. We're still early in the next extension of this closure. So we don't know what time will bring us. But as I've learned, I don't try to make too many decisions too early in the process because we get a change very quickly on some things. So, so we can move on to that. That's just an update for you all in terms of some of the things that are happening in terms of budget as we look at that FY20 budget. So another item that we have on the superintendent's report tonight is the school choice, the topic of school choice. School committee is asked to vote on school choice if they're going to extend school choice into the next year by May 1st. I know that Donna included in your packet some of the school choice parameters. I actually have, oops, sorry, I'm in the wrong mode. I can't do that, can I? I thought I could, yeah, open link in new tab. This is if it works, there it comes. No, it's not opening. We tried doing it the old-fashioned way. Oh, it did open. It just opened behind it and I couldn't see it. All right, so this is the information that Donna shared with all of you in terms of school choice, what we currently have. We, in the past, have always voted for 10 slots, kindergarten through 8th grade, and 15 slots, grades 9 through 12. I think one of the things you're going to notice is there's not really a lot of openings for us right now. Most of our seats are full. Our projected, currently, this is the enrollment that we have, 129 students that are choicing in. Currently projected for the 2021 year is 115. You'll notice that's largely because the 10 seats open up for kindergarten to come in, and the grade 12 seats were 5 more open up from 8 to 9. So here's what we have available. This is essentially what you'll be voting on, whether or not you want to offer the seats out for school choice. 10 for kindergarten, 3 for grade 1, 4 for grade 2, 1 for grade 3, 1 for grade 4, 1 for grade 5, 2 for grade 6. There are no seats available in grade 7 or 8. And then we have 6 in grade 9, and that's largely because we increased from 10 to 15 from 8 to 9. 2 in grade 10 and 5 in grade 11. So I thought that Donna included here what the requests are for March 30th through March 30th, so we know how many people are looking. So we have 35 seats. We have 45 people looking to come. And then I did put the enrollment numbers over here just in case anyone was wondering what our enrollments for those grades were.
Dr. Churchak, I believe one year we decided to close kindergarten to open enrollment, and I think we experienced a bubble year anyway with our now upcoming first graders when we reopened. But I wonder if you have a recommendation to us based on conversations that we've had as a committee about the class sizes, about the space at the high school, whether you think it might be prudent to close off some of the younger grades or maybe make a change to that jump from the 10 seats to the 15 seats at the high school level yet, or is that still a couple years off?
Well, I would say that if you're, I'll look at the last one that you said first, actually. So in grades 7 and 8, we are at capacity. We have no empty seats available, and we have very large class sizes going up to the high school of 367 and 394. So, I think if you were going to think to make a move to go from 15 down to 10 in those grade levels, that might cover you in some of those bubble years. That being said, 5 students it depends. 5 students in the scheme of things isn't very many when you're looking at 394. So, but for me, those are class sizes that are really large. When that 394 hits freshman, the freshman year at the high school, that's going to be a pretty big bump for the high school. That's a class size that they haven't had for a very long time. So, our numbers right now in kindergarten don't show us to be too concerned about our kindergarten enrollment this year. Those are pretty low for us at this time of year, although the last 3 weeks have been unprecedented. So, and we did get 4 or 5 new enrollments or requests for enrollment over the period. But 330 is I think we're anticipating that being about a 350 or 360 when we open. But if we took the 10, that would automatically go to 340. So I think those are the things you need to consider. Our class sizes at the kindergarten, we're working really hard to try to manage them at the 2021 range that we have. Sometimes they creep up to 22. That's not necessarily because our enrollments are high. It's because we're trying to maintain kids in their own home schools. And, there are some bubble that, like, when you only have 3 sections to put kids in, it's either add a 4th section and only have 14 in a class, or keep them at 3 sections and let them stay in their home school. We don't go over 22, really. That's the limit. And so that's when we start the list of having to go to other schools. But Ellen and Donna work really hard throughout the summer to try to, fill in the blanks to keep as many kids as we can at their home school.
Okay. I'm looking to my school committee members to see if we have any raised hands. I see Ms. Visnick, you have a raised hand. Go ahead. You're on mute. There we go.
Thanks. I wonder if you have a recommendation, Dr. Churocek, given the bubble that was last year, or this year's kindergarten, that'll be next year's first grade at projected enrollment of 425, we added some number of sections of kindergartners. So is there a plan in place already that would take some number of those kindergarten teachers and shift them up to first grade to handle that bubble? I'm trying to get at the point of, if we take 10 more students at the kindergarten level and our projected enrollment comes in higher for kindergarten, would that put us in a situation where we would have to hire more teachers versus, quote unquote, just flipping the first grade and the kindergarten staff, so to speak? I'm wording that poorly, but words are failing me now.
Right. No, I understand what you're asking. I think, so we do know already we have to add 2 first grade classrooms. We actually think we might have to add 3, but that you're right. If kindergarten came in lower than, say, the 360 or 370 that we anticipate, we could move some of those teachers up. So yes, we planned on rolling those positions up if we could. Again, we didn't do it immediately because we didn't know what our kindergarten enrollments would come in at. But that would be, in essence, a save of a teacher or 2 if we were only at 350 versus 400. And again, it depends on what schools they roll out, how they're distributed across, and we'll be forced to move people from their home school to another school. What we do is we pretty much say, if you register within the registration period, we can 90% of the time make sure you get your home school. And this year we were able to put everyone in their home school that registered during the registration period. It's people that register pretty much from March on that we tell them they're kind of on a waiting list until we find out if there's room in their home school or if they'll be assigned to another school, because we don't want to have classes of 16 in one building and 22 in another. So.
Right, but for the choice in, for the 10 that we may or may not take as a choice in, those get put wherever we say they're going to get put.
Exactly.
So that has no bearing. Our acceptance or denial of 10 new students has no bearing on that particular leveling.
Correct. Well, we actually use them to level. That's in some way, so somebody may put in a request for school choice and say, I'd like to go to Cove. And our response will be, well, Cove is full right now. However, there's an opening, we know we can offer you school choice at North Beverly, and it's up to them whether they accept that or not. So you're right. It doesn't force us to hire a new teacher because of the leveling, so to speak. It's just sheer numbers, whether or not we would need more people.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, I saw your hand.
I
something we may want to be cognizant of is the idea that where the economy is right now, there could be people who are planning on going to a private school, whether it's kindergarten through grade 12, who may be changing their minds in our Beverly residents.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I'm going to call on myself. I wonder, I know that these requests are pretty much anonymous and it's handled by a lottery. I always feel concerned about excluding people who work in our district from being able to choice their own families in so that they can have the same schedule and have a good work-life balance. Do we have a lot of concern that these 9 requests that we've seen to date would negatively impact our staff? Or is that really not for us to know?
I don't know that data off the top of my head, for one, but I'd add another category. I think sometimes also it's siblings. So sometimes you have a sibling or two that are already in grades 4 and 2, and now the kindergartner's coming along. You know, I don't know that that's a reason to make a decision one way or another, but I would say that's something to be cognizant of in the process as well.
Okay, I'm looking to see if any other members wish to raise their hands. If not, I have one more question / comment. Ms. Visnick, go ahead first.
I'm wondering where I would expect to see, as you mentioned, Madam President, there was a year that we said no intake, and I don't see that year reflected here. I would expect us to see a 0 somewhere.
I believe that it was current grade 2.
I believe so as well. It was a couple years back.
So then I don't understand why we have spots there already taken
The next
now.
year, so you voted it as a 0 in kindergarten, but the next year you didn't vote it as a 0 in grade 1. You'd have to vote it as a 0 all the way down.
Okay, got it. And I will say this, I don't know, Madam President, if BevCam can do anything. I have 2 reports coming into my cell phone that the audio for the people who are watching the BevCam stream of our Zoom meeting, that the audio is poor. So I don't know if that can be tuned at all.
So there's one thing that I can do if you're interested, because I don't know the answer to your question about staff, you know, children. I actually have a question about whether it's we can legally consider that or not. I'm not sure. And if I, you know, that's one thing, and I don't want to misspeak. And also, that's one thing, and I don't want to misspeak. Wow, I'm on a real echo. I can come back on the 8th with that answers to questions now that you've had a chance to look at them and ask some questions, and we can hold the vote until the 8th if you want, because we don't need to have it until May 1st.
Okay. I think if I remember correctly, we're not supposed to know who these people are in our decision. What we should be looking at is our overall class sizes, whether we want to balance our revenue potential of $5,000 per child against our class sizes. And so with that said, is there anyone on the school committee that would like to entertain a motion to, you fill in the blank, on our school choice program, or is there a consensus that we'd like to hold this for some further thought? Ms. Visnick, go ahead.
Thanks. I think that it's always a balance in between the income and the class size. And I think that not to be the Debbie Downer of all Debbie Downers, but I think we need to, I said this at our last meeting, be prepared for some real serious, difficult budget conversations. And I think as we continue to go through this closure, as we continue to go through the economic downturn, it's quite possible that our budget will be much less next year. And so then this becomes even more of a balancing act, because on one hand you think, oh, if I can get more money into the district, by all means, I'd like to get more money into the district. On the other hand, we look at the fact that if we have to make those tough budget decisions, then maybe we're going to have larger class sizes. So given that, I personally would like to delay talking about this and hope that we have some more tangible numbers at our next meeting. I think it's really early on for us to really be forcing ourselves into those terribly difficult conversations that we will eventually have to have, but certainly I'd like to try to delay those as long as possible.
Okay. Hearing some indication of delay, is there anyone that did want to make a motion this evening to proceed? I'm looking for hands. Ms. Ferretti, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Dr. Turocek what she felt the comfortable time frame was, because if there are families out there that are trying to plan the next academic year and counting on school choice, I want to be mindful of those families as well. What is your thought, Dr. Turocek, on the timeline for this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's actually, we need to have a school committee vote by May 1st. We don't send out the school choice letters until June 1st. So the school committee vote precedes the notification of families about school choice by a month. So the first thing that you need to do is vote on it, and we have to declare to the Department of Ed that these are the numbers that we're accepting for these seats. Remember, nobody leaves, so the ones that are already here stay. It's just whether or not we're going to keep those numbers at the levels that they are for new applicants. And so we wouldn't be notifying them till June 1 anyway.
Okay.
Thank you. If we delayed the vote then and did not have a motion this evening, it would be comfortable for that time frame?
Yes, because you have a meeting. We have a meeting. I'm sure we'll have another meeting before May 1st. We have a meeting, I think, on the calendar for the 8th, at least. And I don't know whether, I guess I'm assuming we're going to have the meetings as they're scheduled. I don't know for sure. I probably shouldn't assume that, but so we're fine in timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any motions. I'm not seeing any. Oh, I see one more hand, Ms. Bisnick.
John, Mr. Mulady wishes to speak.
Oh, thank you. I'm not seeing him. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mulady.
Hi, thanks. I was wondering if we can hear from Jean about the financial implications of voting to keep going or to stop it.
So, John, the only thing that happens is, like they said, we get $5,000 in per student. So there's just the possibility of bringing in that money. But yeah, I would say that we could wait until April, for the next meeting. But, I would be saying that we do need to watch that, first grade class as it grows through. But we also have a high, 7th grade, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands? Ms. Sherburne, I'm just going to mute you again. There we go. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. We will table this. We will give it some more consideration, and we will intend to include it on our agenda for our April meeting.
Yes.
There we go. Sorry, I muted you for a second. I was getting some feedback on your line, Dr. Turocek, and I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. I can't see. Okay. Do we want to go on to the next topic of the Student Opportunity Act discussion?
So first, I'm going to start by apologizing 1,000 times over for getting you a document at an hour before the meeting. And I want to explain to you sort of what happened. We have been told since the day of the shutdown, the first minute of the shutdown, that there was going to be an extension on voting, an extension on submission of the Student Opportunity Act plan. We were told on last Thursday that it had gone to the legislator and it had passed the first round, and so we shouldn't worry, that it would probably just happen, and the extension would be coming, that we would know this morning what the new date would be. So that's why the slide originally said that the new date has not been released. I found out this afternoon, and it hasn't been totally confirmed, but it was suggested that at some point the legislature took the governor's bill, Emergency Act, and they took it apart, and the part that had the SOA extension in it didn't make it through, and other things did make it through. So, and I don't know, sometimes I think that happens just in the way they're pushing things through or not. I had the draft ready. Dr. Flaherty and I had been working on it, but we were figuring we would have an opportunity to kind of maybe go and have some more conversation around it. But instead, I thought, well, I'm not going to take the chance of being late. I have been told that if it's late, no one's going to say anything, but that's sort of not how I roll. So I figured I'd rather present it to you tonight and let you see it. And if there are questions, we can make some adjustments and go from there. But so I did share with you a copy of the draft plan. I can walk through it very quickly if you'd like me to. It's really not, like, as we said, we were a short form district. And so as such, in a short form district, there was not that much in terms of narrative or anything like that. So if you'd like, I'll just walk you through each. It's basically 4 commitments. The first commitment is what student groups are we going to focus on. One of the activities that we did, I think the commissioner's desire was that the school teams and district teams spend more time thinking about the student opportunity plan than actually writing one, which is why you have a sort of a shortened version of the opportunity plan. But we did a data dive. We've done a lot of looking at data over the past 4 months, both Dot and I as part of the entry plan and leadership team as part of our data meetings. And we looked specifically which particular subgroup of students did we want to concentrate in terms of the achievement gap and opportunity gap. So we have kind of narrowed ours down to English language learners and former English learners. That's a group that doesn't get as much attention, I don't think, but we do a great job in our English program, and kids exit, but then they are considered former English learners, and we follow that data. So how are they doing as they go through our system? So that's a subgroup that we certainly have our eye on and have discovered through our research that's a group we want to put a little more attention. Students with disabilities is always a group that we have some concerns and want to make sure that we're doing the best we can by. And in Beverly, in particular, the low income and economically disadvantaged students is a subgroup that we want to watch and monitor. High needs is really just putting them all together. Any student that is in any one of those categories falls into our high needs. So when we look at data and when the Department of Ed extrapolates data in certain ways, one way they disaggregate it is through what they call the high needs students. Our African American and Black students in some categories, more importantly, making sure we're looking at attendance, making sure we're looking at our discipline reports, things like that. And then our Asian students, largely because of the scenario that we found ourselves at the middle school, where our Asian students are underperforming similar cohorts of their peers in other districts, not necessarily that they're below the aggregate. And then finally, Hispanic or Latinx students. And again, those are subgroups that we want to keep our eye on. And so there's just a little narrative as to how we chose them. We talk a little bit about the fact that they're not experiencing the same level of MCAS outcome graduation rates, and additionally that they have a high percentage of students in our chronic absenteeism. They're underrepresented in our advanced coursework data. So that these were sort of the areas that brought us to those are the factors that we looked at when we chose those student groups. The next asks us to take a look at evidence-based programs to close gaps. I talked to you a little bit how the commissioner had 16 categories working together. So remember, we didn't do this in isolation. I incorporated conversations during our priority setting, and we did priority setting for the Student Opportunity Act. I incorporated feedback from parent groups. We did parent forums for the CPAC, which is our special education parent group, with the LPAC, which is our English language learner parent group. We polled PTO parents in the PTO parent group. And so we tried to bring together as many. We ran out of time when we closed. We were going to have one group, but we also had data from our survey. If you remember, we did a pretty extensive survey for the superintendent's entry plan. So we got quite a bit of data from that. So we incorporated that all together. And these are the areas we're proposing that we look at. Program number 1, the first area that we want to look at is supporting educators to implement high quality curriculum. And this is really twofold, but it really comes from our data dive, proposing that we look for a director of curriculum for STEM. When we look at that MCAS data for those students with the achievement gaps, it is very clear that the areas of math and science are the areas that we struggle the most and that we have the largest gaps. We're proposing that we need some more curriculum leadership in that area, not necessarily just curriculum, also to take sure that we have based high quality curriculum that has components, meets the needs of all different kinds of learners. And in addition, with the right person, we would expand that to computer science and digital literacy and advanced coursework to make sure that, so one of the things we also noticed is our students in our student groups are not accessing advanced coursework in some of the course areas that some of our other students are, and we'd really like to expand our offerings and make sure that we are really working to advance kids and challenge kids and make sure they're taking advantage of all of the opportunities that all of our students are. So that was one area. We're proposing another teacher of English language learning at the high school. The Student Opportunity Act really pointed out and made us rethink the fact that if you're a beginner, when you come to Beverly and you're a freshman or a sophomore, you have not only the language to learn, but how do you access that curriculum and how are we supporting that? So that's a proposal that we were putting in, to it. We were particularly going to look for, we have high hopes that we will find an English language certified teacher of either math or science so that we can buoy our supports in those areas as well. I think you'll find that we're really sort of trying to concentrate on the math science. We think that's an area that we need to work on. And so we're kind of, and we were told to try to streamline, don't try to do everything all at once. And so we felt like if we narrowed a content area down to the math science area and we looked at it through the lens of our student groups, we'd actually be a little more effective in what we do. And then finally, we're proposing some curriculum materials to support the adoption of a research-based program in math for all of our grades. Probably science too, but right now we're going to look at math to start. So that's what the first we're calling it Program 1. That's the first program that we're proposing. Program 2 was increased personnel and services to support holistic student needs. This really also comes from the data. We're proposing a position that's called the Director of Equity and Student Support Services. This position would be responsible for coordinating, tracking, and supervising service delivery to students to enhance mental, social, and emotional well-being, as well as improve their academic experience. A key component would be addressing chronic absenteeism, as well as access to advanced coursework. Kind of what we mean by that is really working in our guidance department as well and taking a look at how are we helping students find pathways. Betty has a lot of really great plans around creating pathways and advancing them. And so this is sort of just someone that we think is necessary in order to make that work as well as we hope. We're also proposing an academic teacher to support the expansion of our student support classrooms. This year, as you know, we added some student support classrooms, and they're right now. It's manned by a school adjustment counselor at the middle school. Our goal would be to add an academic teacher and make that a team, so that one of the things we notice is the students are having a hard time getting back into their content classes. If they're spending a lot of time in the student support center, how are we getting them back into the general curriculum? And so we don't want to take them so far out of the curriculum that we're actually making it worse. So those two positions were proposed as part of Program 2. Program 3, you actually have already seen addressed. That's our partnership with Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical High School. Again, we voted to partner with them. That comes with, we're still have not heard on another grant opportunity, but we want to make sure if we don't get that grant, we have money somewhere in order to do it. And the money is eligible for that. And so we've put that proposal in here. And then finally, I added, this is a little shift, but I added expanded access to high quality full day kindergarten because it was something that was eligible. And if you note later on when we talk about kindergarten fees, we want to make sure that we have the money that we need in order to do that. And this was another opportunity to include it, to make sure that we have that funding. It's really keeping in mind if we don't collect kindergarten tuition fees for the remainder of this year, where we would get money. So we put it in there as a place. I'm not sure. I am also going to say very clearly that I think that we'll be able to amend this based upon the circumstances that have happened, but I just wanted to make sure that I put this together for you so you saw where we were going. So finally, we had to identify what metrics we were going to use to measure success, and it's quite clear, choosing math achievement on MCAS and science achievement on MCAS and student growth in math. Those are the metrics that we'll measure. We're putting a lot of eggs in the math basket and really saying that that's the area that we want to work on. And in addition to looking at our local benchmarks and common assessments. And then finally, additional indicators, the chronic absenteeism, that's a target that's sent by the state. And I want to make sure that that's a high focus for us, that level of engagement, particularly in these student groups, because our data shows us that that's an area that we really need to put more attention. And then finally, also looking at the percentage of 11th and 12th graders completing at least one DESE identified coursework. That means 11th and 12th graders in these student subgroups. For me, completing those advanced coursework. Because if we're going to say that's what we're going to do, we need to measure how are we doing with that. So. And then finally, the commitment number 4 was to engage all families. And we did. We engaged our stakeholders in public forums and conducted surveys. We had a phenomenal turnout. One of the areas that was suggested was that we work closely with our unions. We had a great opportunity to work with teachers and paras at the end, members of the BTA at a para forum on March 3rd. We solicited a lot of input from them. Many of the ideas about addressing holistic learning, taking a look at some of those things, those were very high on the list of what the teachers and paras were saying. The Beverly CPAC and the Beverly LPAC also, and then finally the survey. So that's how we solicited our engagement for families. And so then finally this is the last step, we have to certify by vote of the school committee that you've seen this plan, that you approved this plan, and that I can submit it. Submission date is April 1st, which is Wednesday. So I did put a budget here. Again, this is, I'm not sure. I don't know that any of us know what we're going into in the finances. I'm not sure if there's going to be big changes to the formulas that were created, but I did create a budget based upon what we saw. We talked earlier as a school committee about what percentage of the million is going to be ongoing expenses and what percentage would be the student opportunity plan. So I just kind of went with the numbers that I saw. The numbers are here. Each program is outlined, and that's all that the Department of Ed is requesting right now in terms of a budget. They're not looking for major detail beyond that. So that's what I submitted. Well, I haven't submitted. This is what I'm proposing to you to vote on so that I can submit it.
Okay. So in my review, I think this is consistent with the topics that we've discussed as a committee of the whole. I do wonder if committee members want to weigh in on whether what they've seen in this outline reflects the priorities of this school committee, our understanding of how the Student Opportunity Act money would be funded, and to see if we have support for a vote this evening. I would entertain a motion after we have some discussion to support Dr. Chirocek's recommendations in providing this short form to the DESE on time. Ms. Visnick, I see your hand.
I'm wondering whether I should make a motion so we can have the discussion.
That would be the proper order of things. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this plan by Dr. Chirocek.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
I have a second from Ms. Ferretti and Ms. Coelho. I'll take Ferretti since I heard her at this time. Okay. And now we're open for discussion. Ms. Visnick, did you want to lead the discussion?
I'd love to ask a question. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Dr. Chirocek, I believe is item 3. I lost my second monitor, so I apologize. I'm on one laptop monitor here. So, and compared to your budget, I think we already voted to do the after dark.
Yeah.
And I thought we voted on a number that was not, I don't believe, reflected in your budget. I think we voted on a number of 150,000, and I think I see 120 on your budget.
It was 120.
What we voted on was 120.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay.
You can double check me, but I'm pretty sure that it was.
All right.
They said 10, they said 12, the 12 times 10, that was the number. Dot, I think Dr. Flaherty, you're on the line, I think. Do you remember as well? Or Betty?
All right. I'm not hung up on that. I was just a little curious.
We did look it up and it looked like it was 120. So that's why that was the figure we went with.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I'm still hopeful that'll come in a grant, but.
Am I seeing any other hands? Do committee members have additional questions or comments? Mr. Milady, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions. One is, I don't remember how many SACs are currently at the middle school, and a rough estimate, so maybe from Bethany or Terry, what would you say their caseload size or sizes are?
Bethany, are you there?
So there is a school adjustment counselor per grade at the middle school. It's hard to estimate their caseload because in addition to students who have special education services that include school adjustment counselor, they also meet the needs of general education students who want to meet with them. So it's hard for me to estimate what their caseloads look like because they have some students who they just kind of check in with and provide support to, but don't see regularly.
Yeah, we have one per grade level. We have one on our student support program. Then we have a 0.6 that does a lot of the one-on-one sessions, as well as smaller group lunch groups, things like that. Some more of a high needs kids.
And you also have one in your so there's a student support program, and there's 2 student supports, right? Because there's 2 different programs, and you also have 2 Leahy behavioral health SACs full time, correct?
Yes, so 6.6 plus 2 Leahy counselors from Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Conant. Do we have additional questions? I'm not seeing any hands from our school committee members. Mayor Cahill, I can't see your hand either way due to the technological way that you've joined. Oh, Mr. Milady has another question. Mr. Milady?
So, I'm more looking for a number. So if you're the SAC in, let's say, 7th grade, and you have your caseload, and then you have other general ed kids coming in, can we get an idea how many students these people are providing for on a day?
Yeah, if you pick on grade 7, for instance, I think there's about 360 kids, give or take. That that adjustment counselor is responsible for that entire grade, but you also have students that access the student support programs. You also have our 0.6 adjustment counselor that that does a lot of the individual sessions. So probably looking at about 300, I would say. Particularly grade 7. It might be different grades. I'm just estimating grade 7.
Okay, I see Miss Coelho. Are you coming off mute? Do you need me to help you? No. Any other hands? One. Let's see.
I don't see any, Rachel.
I don't see any either. Okay. So we have a motion to accept the recommendations of Dr. Chirochek for the short form student opportunity plan for Beverly Public Schools to be submitted by the due date of April 1st, 2020. I think we're ready to vote. We'll take a roll call vote. Nod of your heads if we're ready to vote. Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. Okay. I will call on Ms. Coelho first. Yes. And Mr. Milady?
I'm honestly not ready to vote, so I might abstain.
Okay.
So I'm going to say abstain.
Okay. Ms. Robinson? You're abstaining? I'm lip reading. Do you need me to unmute you? Oh, there you go.
I would abstain. I'm not ready to vote on that yet.
Okay. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Madam President, it concerns me that my fellow committee members are not yet ready to vote. And to that extent, what are our procedural options for putting this on hold or reopening discussion?
We can make a motion to table the motion.
I think we have something on our agenda about when is our next meeting going to be, but this is due tomorrow, right? Tomorrow?
Wednesday.
As my children used to say, tomorrow is tomorrow.
Yeah.
In that case, I'm torn, but I vote yes. In order to get it on time, we have to vote tonight. We're not going to have another meeting.
Okay. I'm also going to vote yes, because I do feel that it's a short form and it's a framework. I'm not sure that given the circumstances, any one district can be held to anything, especially given that things may change. Oh, I'm sorry, somebody's line is open. And Mayor Cahill, I'm going to call on you next. I'm just trying to find that line. Okay, I found that line.
I'm here.
Okay.
I vote yes. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voting in the affirmative with 2 abstaining. The motion does pass. So Dr. Chirochek, you have the school committee's approval to submit.
Okay, thank you.
Something further that you need from us tonight?
Nope, I just will send in the vote and the date that we voted on it. And again, I will tell you, I will come back to you as soon as I have more guidance too, if anything is to change or shift or anything as we go through the process. But, and you know, as we all know, we don't know what FY21 is really going to bring us. So there's a lot of uncertainty, like in everything else that we're doing these days. So thank you for that. All right. And then right now, I just wanted to do just a quick update. The last time that I came to you, we were in the very beginning stages of launching our Beverly Keeps Learning Classroom to Home. And I wanted to kind of come back to you. We've gotten a lot more guidance since the first time. We were all really just trying to figure out what we were going to be able to do and how we might accomplish what we were looking at. I'm just going to put those pictures away. So there's a lot of language here, but I wanted to include with you what the guidance from the state has been, the guidance from the commissioner. I want to report that we've had a successful launch to our website. I won't click on it. I'm sure most of you have been there, but if you haven't, go back and visit. It's I want to say it's a platform that keeps growing, and every time I look at it, I'm amazed. And that's largely because I think the work that you see on the websites is really teacher driven. Our teachers have really stepped up and really decided that, found that they were really dedicated to making this work for their kids. And I wanted to kind of outline the principles that were going on, because I think there's a lot of conversation about learning at home and remote learning, and sorry about that. And so I just wanted to kind of go over the commissioner did a great job of outlining the principles. And I think in Beverly, we've kind of tried to embody that as well. So first of all, and first and foremost in our preparation for everything that we're doing right now, it's really important for us to understand that this is a national health emergency. This isn't a remote learning emergency. And so I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind. Everything that we're doing is about the safety and well-being of our students and our family and our staff, right? And so it has to be our top priority as an educational community. We have to be making sure that we're taking care of our people, and our Beverly community is our Beverly family. And so I'm very, very proud of the work that everyone has done, from our principals to our teachers to our staff members to our, oh my goodness, fabulous cafeteria workers who keep the meals going out for kids, to our school adjustment counselors and nurses who are reaching out to our families. It's been a team effort, and we're all working and really with the idea that safety and well-being is the most important thing. We are also very aware that this crisis will disproportionately affect some of our most vulnerable students and families. And so we really are keeping equity at the top of our efforts. Our principals, I'm so proud of the work they have done. Our learning platform and our learning plan, because it's not just an online platform, it's a whole plan, really focuses in on equity, making sure that we're incorporating students with disabilities and our students that might have difficulties challenging, accessing and getting access to materials. Making connections between students and staff has been really our top priority. Our staff has really risen to the occasion in terms of outreach and trying to make sure they're connecting with staff, with students, and making sure that, that if they touch base with some of them and assure them that, we're all in this together. We all acknowledge that nothing is going to replace the in-schooling experience, right? So working remotely has its challenges, and it does not replace that in-school experience. And we're not trying to replicate a traditional school day. So that's not our intent. Our intent is to provide enrichment, activities, opportunities for practice and reteaching around skills that we've already taught. But more importantly, trying to create some sense of normalcy and engagement for our students in a time of real uncertainty. But now that's been said, but now those school closures have been extended, and we now know that we probably have an additional obligation to kind of make sure that we're looking at our opportunities that we send out to be meaningful and productive learning opportunities. I also want, and our principals have been steadfast in stating this with their communities, remote learning is not synonymous with online learning. For us, we're pushing out our information in an online venue, but the learning that's embedded within our Google Classrooms and within our activities is really not synonymous with online. We're hoping that the activities that are coming out are people will see that there's a multitude of ways in which they can participate in the learning. We have received some guidance from the Department of Ed that districts support students to engage in learning for approximately half the length of a regular school day. That certainly does not mean 3 hours of sitting on a computer. That means that 3 hours of a combination of directed learning and student self-directed learning. So making sure that we're varying the tasks that we're doing. But half of the length of the regular school day is what we're asked to kind of plan for. The Department of Ed is still recommending that we focus on reinforcing skills that are already taught in school and deepening these skills. They're giving a little more leeway in terms of exploring new content, particularly at the high school level. But again, we have equity to consider and access and support. And so we need to be mindful of how we're managing to plan all of that. I will say at this time, one of the things that the department has broken it down into 2 phases. Phase 1 sort of was this initial, oh my goodness, here's some enrichment activities. Let's put together a plan. Phase 2 is when we will hope to go more deeply into some of the skills, as well as probably at the high school level, consider exploring some new content. And so April 6th is the date that we hope to see us kind of transition into some of that. I don't think it'll look like a big change, but for students, the tasks they're asked to do will be focused on some deeper learning and new content at that time. We in Beverly are committed to looking at the project-based and inquiry-based lessons. It aligns with our goals. It gives us, we're learning great opportunities to integrate multiple disciplines together. I'm seeing STEM challenges and things like that are bringing in skills from a number of different disciplines. We're going to continue to encourage daily time for enrichment, including dance, music, media, theater, visual arts. Our specialists and global apps teachers are all present on the learning platform and pushing out information to students in ways to incorporate that. I think it's been amazing. If you jump into a morning meeting in elementary school, there's a music teacher or an art teacher or someone joining each day. So it's a really great experience. And then the other students are also encouraged to spend time on the choice boards that are out there and pick areas of interest for them. So it's a really unique time, I think, for us to be saying, what do you really want to do? Work in an area of your passion. So those are the things about the actual, how come I'm going so far ahead of myself here?
I'm going to call myself really quickly. Yes. I had to cave on my rule about no TikTok for my 5th and 6th graders because they seem to be using that platform for some really creative interdisciplinary work.
I think we're all finding the value in good ways to use technology. We talk all the time when we come back to school, we're going to see a lot of really powerful use of technology in a stronger and better way than we ever did before, just from the familiarity that teachers are getting through using the tools. And it's just every day is a professional development day for our teachers right now, believe me, and they are working so hard. So as are our paras, as are our specialists and our therapists, and special ed teachers. So it's really it's amazing to watch.
I was going to say I also had to let YouTube become available to my 5th and 6th grader for Mr. Conant's stellar work. So thank you, Mr. Conant.
Yes. And let me tell you, if you're on Instagram, tune in for Mrs. Taylor's Poetry Hour because she's doing a poem a day, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
I'm looking for hands. I see Ms. Visnick's hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Visnick.
Thank you. Dr. Churchak, I'm wondering if you can speak to the date of April 6th.
Mm-hmm. Why we picked it?
Yes.
Yes, great. So that's a good question. We actually had been operating strangely in Beverly on a Wednesday to Wednesday schedule because we launched it on a Wednesday, and then the next Wednesday we opened up the elementary schools. But I had an opportunity, or I continue to meet with the North Shore Roundtable, and part of the conversation that we had was that we really wanted to try to be cohesive as a region in what we do. And they were suggesting April 6th. And when the leadership team and I sat down and talked about it, it was sort of an opportunity to take this week. Well, first of all, we want to work with the union. And I actually have had some great conversations already. And I know Julia's watching here with us today. But we want to make sure that we're putting together a plan that that values our staff, and that, that we're careful and clear about what we're doing. It gives us a chance to revisit. We have some things that we needed to determine. Closing what grades? So we had trimester 2 was not quite over. Quarter 3 had begun. And so we believe we need a little bit of time to have some conversations around what is that going to look like? How are we going to work through some of those technicalities? As well as it gives teachers a week to plan and think about what will that new content look like in this new environment. And how I also am really one big focus of this week is who are we not reaching? And each principal in each building has a sheet going right now where we're tracking students and finding out who has signed on, who hasn't signed on, making phone calls, reaching out, trying to find out are there kids that are not accessing and why, and A, why are they safe and are they okay? And B, if they're not, how can we help them do that more? So we just felt that this week was a really necessary week, and April 6th made a lot of sense for us as we move forward.
Thank you.
Do I see any other committee member hands? Mr. Milady, is that a hand? Yes, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry. Can you unmute? Or I guess I can. I don't want to double unmute.
Unmute myself.
There you go.
Okay. So at the risk of being the turd in the proverbial punch bowl, I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on it. I think, talking to a couple of other parents who are trying to work full-time, both parents, as well as help out with this, probably the first time any generation of parents have had to do this. And on top of that, with all the other concerns about health and social distancing, it's hard. This is really, really hard for parents. I think it's much harder than anybody ever could have anticipated. I really appreciate, these talking points that this is not going to substitute time in the classroom, because it's absolutely not. But one of my constituents lives down the road, is explaining that trying to help her 2 elementary school kids with their programming, she runs a small business. He works for Progressive, is an essential employee. They're working in shifts, and then when the kids are asleep, they're working again until 11:30, 12:30 at night. And then, hearing what, Desi's saying about half a school day, if you're spending half of your time with your kids not doing your job and trying to run a household, and I appreciate that that's not the rule. That's kind of the suggestion. But, those growlers were not empty prior to this becoming like Little House on the goddamn prairie. So I have some concerns, and I think it's something that we need to talk about and talking about. I know that there's some programs that are talking about some mental health opportunities, some virtual or digital programs. So the Home for Little Wanderers is having free therapy sessions for parents and for students. And I would like to see, our team put a link to that on the district site. So for example, and then I'll finish my rant in a minute, but I have 2 kids. I don't have enough devices. My wife works full time. I'm trying to do my job. So I'm able to get one of my elementary school kids' lessons going. And then I can't have my other child do another activity because it's a little bit too difficult. And all of a sudden, shit hits the fan. It's like, oh yeah, I have a 3rd child, and where is she? And I think that is more the norm. And I love all the resources that have been available. But I guess what I'm saying is just keep that message to parents that you can't do anything for your kids if you're having a tough time, and just keep reinforcing this idea that, like you said, learning looks differently. It doesn't mean 3 hours in front of a tablet or a computer. This is the new normal. And I feel like you're going to see more and more people over time get a little bit more burnt out, and they're going to have those concerns about, my kids falling behind on this level, or what's going to happen to my junior with SATs and blah, blah, blah. So I apologize for.
No. I actually want to thank you. It reminded me of something that I didn't share, or that we've shared via our website, but I didn't mention tonight, because the device issue is challenging, right? If you have 3 kids, one of the things that is available to you, and I would really encourage parents and encourage you to encourage parents, WGBH is a partner with the Department of Ed, and from noon to 5, they have some television programming that gives some kids some ideas of things they can do that's not a device. And I also, nothing is mandatory. Everything is optional. No one is going to be in trouble for not doing it. When we hit April 6th and you're in the upper grades and your work is being sent out to you for those grade levels, they are, this should be self-directed learning for them. Teachers should not be sending home work that parents need to teach their kids, right? So let me back up. When we hit April 6th, it's going to switch to a credit or an incomplete, right? And so, yes, they're going to be expected to do the work that's pushed out. But at elementary, that's not going to be by the hour. It's going to be, you're going to have task checklists and things like that. I have all the sympathy in the world for the families that are doing it. I hope that the activities that are coming your way are those that, are engaging and your child can stay engaged in doing something for a period of time. But John, 100%, this is not easy, and it is no other generation has had to do it. And I'm not sure, I think as a educational experiment, I think one of the things that we're learning is how valuable that teacher is, because we have to acknowledge that this is not easy. So.
Thank you. I see, Ms. Coelho, your hand has been raised, and I've unmuted your line.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Milady was saying. It really isn't hard. It really is hard. I have 3 kids in 3 different school systems myself, and it's easier for me to help my elementary school student. My high school student, forget it, he's on another level. But then my middle school student, he's the one that has high functioning autism, and he cannot deal with it. I don't let him leave the house because of everything, and he just cannot function. He opens up the web page and he's like, what is going on? He gets so overwhelmed, and then he sits and cries because he just doesn't understand that it doesn't count. It's just to help him. And yeah. I'd also have to say, thank God for Garrett Brown, because he is a godsend. And his therapist, he has a therapist from Home for Little Wanderers, Miss Jen. And she does FaceTime and Zoom with him. And she's like, well, let me try to help you, Alex. Let's see what we can do. But she doesn't understand the work that they're doing either. So then it's a rock, and he feels like he's already failing when he doesn't need to feel that way.
So I'm really glad that he has connected with his staff at school, with the teachers at school. And, again, I think it's important for you to connect too and let them know if things, and any parent, anyone out there, if your child is experiencing distress, certainly please reach out to your classroom teachers, reach out, they can help with resources. We can have some conversations. This is not meant for anyone. We're all doing our best, right? So we've never done this before. I will tell you that teachers and principals are making adjustments throughout the week. I've watched conversations about, all right, everybody slow down. We can't all be giving assignments on the same day. So let's try to find a way to collaborate and connect and make sure that we're sending a balance home. I think these are all going to be new ways for us to learn. I don't know if any, Dot, if you have anything to add in terms of that. I know you and I have spent a lot of time discussing how we can help balance and how we can provide balance for our families.
Yeah, we provided that feedback in especially if you do have students at different levels, trying to make sure that they're coordinating so that, a student in 2nd and 4th grade in the same school don't have morning meeting at the same time if there's only one device. We also sent a strong message about this shouldn't all be online learning. It can be reading a book. It can be going to play outside, going on a nature walk, and then writing a story about it. It shouldn't all be sitting for 3 hours in front of a computer. And we're continuing to stress that message each week and each time we meet with the principals, who are then bringing that message back, and I've seen them relay it to their staffs as well. Everybody knows that the social emotional connections right now are the most important thing we're looking for.
Okay, I saw Ms. Visnick's hand. Oh, Ms. Beretti, you'll be next.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that I wish to acknowledge, if for no other reason than the people who are pinging me on my cell phone as they're watching from home. I've certainly, like John, heard from a lot of my neighbors, and it is difficult. I am in a different place. My children are older. I think we've talked several times before about the fact that our committee is a fantastic, eclectic group in terms of having children at different ages across the district. And so we have a real good glimpse into the different levels. And I do think it's much more difficult for our middle schoolers and our high schoolers. Our middle schoolers and our elementary schoolers. However, I think the social aspect is much more difficult for the high schoolers. So my high school student is my most social of my 4 children, and that's what he's struggling the most with. And so kind of layer that on top of what John said. We're just going to piggyback on top of John's therapy session here. That as a parent, we have to take care of ourselves. And I think we're all, any given person is much more of an extrovert than I am. I've been, perhaps waiting my whole life for this no hugging rule. And, and I work from home quite regularly. So for me, I have been going out of my way to try to ask other people, do they need help, and have phone calls and reach out to people and have Zoom face-to-face kind of calls, because people really need that. Now, then you layer on top of that the fact that, okay, thank goodness I still have a job, and any given person is saying that, thank goodness I still have a job, but I need to work. And now I can't, even though I'm not supposed to sit my child in front of a computer for 3 hours, I also can't just take my child out on a nature walk. For instance, to use the example that Dr. Flaherty just gave. So there's an incredible precarious balance there in between all those things, trying to take care of ourselves, our own mental and physical health, and then do the same for our children, and then try to lay the education on top of that. And I guess I just, I say all the time, I love my day job. My COO ran an all hands the other day, and he said when he started at 8 o'clock California time, at 8:30 I need to put you all on pause because I need to go set my child up on Google Classroom. And so he modeled that behavior for that work-life balance, and he asked all of us to consider where our coworkers are in their life with their families, and don't, for instance, book back-to-back meetings. But I also understand that my work environment is rare. And that's part of the reason why I appreciate my day job as much as I do. So I think that in our role as school committee members, and as I have the ear of so many of our district administrators, who I thank immensely for everything you've done so far and for being on this call this evening, I think we need to continue to keep the totality of that right in the front of our minds, and think about, when we give a packet or when we give an assignment, quote unquote assignment, if your child is 5 or if they're 7, if they're not 15 and independent, what does that mean? It is unprecedented. I'll hands down, this is unprecedented. However, I think we have to really keep in mind this balance in between. I want to try to teach the children who can and want to move forward, but I can't burden the families anymore, because it's all that any given family can do to get through a day right now.
And I think one of the things I want everyone to know, we have a number of teachers who have young children who have weighed in, and they're helping guide that discussion. So that voice is heard, and we're trying to, incorporate it. I've had a couple who say, I can't believe I'm having the hardest time teaching my own kids when I teach all day in my own classroom. So, and they're very much talking about the balance of running, having multiple children in the house and having to do all that. So we're trying really hard. Everybody is just doing their best to navigate a situation that we've never navigated before, and we learn new lessons every day. And it's funny, you asked about why April 6th. I think we all felt the need to take a big pause and have an opportunity to sort of, say, wow, what have we got? And how do we manage it? And how do we make sure that our focus remains on that safety and well-being of our kids? Because that's what's really important right now. It really is the most important thing. And it's, we can get so caught up in our Zoom sessions that we don't know what's going on out in the outside world. But it's a real national health emergency. So that's what we have to kind of keep in our minds.
Okay, I saw Ms. Ferretti's hand and then Ms. Robinson. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes, I just wanted to add my own experience coupled with all the folks I'm hearing from. I think I'm hearing two things. One is the teachers, administrators are amazing. The amount of support they're getting, the resources has been just completely just off the charts. And I would even say that Beverly, I feel, is the envy of most communities within this time right now, and just how great our teachers are being. And, I see my fourth grader on his Zoom meetings and in the morning with Mrs. Gilligan, which is just amazing to see. And he has 100% participation in the class. And, right up the ladder to my high schooler. But my point is what I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing too. I think when we all come back from this, we're going to have kids coming back all over the map, because it's just, nothing's, I'd be lying if I said things were going just swimmingly in my house. There's a lot of crying, yelling, and then what the kids are doing on top of me doing that. But it's, I think when we come back from this, you're going to have some kids that maybe did really well with this at home, that are right on track, to everything from, kids that come back losing time and they're in a much more disadvantaged place. So I think that's a lot of the concern that I've been hearing and concerns I have as a parent too, just, how we're going to approach this and kind of backpedal once we get back in.
So I just hate to keep putting you on the spot, Dr. Flaherty, but I know that you had a particular conversation with the principals regarding this, right? So do you want to share a little bit about the reflections that you all had around that?
Just that ongoing from kindergarten all the way up through high school, we know that students are going to come back in different places, and there are going to be students that need additional support and different ways to help them when they come back. And if we come back, and then we're already starting to plan about what that means for next year, if by any chance we're not back by the end of the school year, and how we make sure that we get everybody to a point where they're equally ready to move on. And so we're already planning the plan B in case the extension goes any further as well. But I think that's really, everybody is very aware that people are going to come back in different places. We're trying, as Dr. Trochek had mentioned earlier today, the focus of this week is really trying to make sure we make a connection with every child to find out what they need if they're not getting on, what the struggle is. Is there a sick family member? Are they sick? Are they not getting a device? Do they not know how to get on the device? Is it just that, again, there's 4 or 5 people all in one household trying to share one device, and seeing how we can help to support them. And that's really our top priority for this coming week, is to make a connection with every kid.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, I was muted. Karen, I've unmuted your line. I think I saw your hand. Oh, and you remuted. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh.
Okay. I just wanted to echo what everybody said, and just to say that for the past 2 weeks, I think teachers were just trying hard to connect, and they were doing a great job. I just saw so much organic social emotional learning happening just with my own 6th grader, and just to see them all in a Google Hangout and smiling at each other. And I mean, honestly, it almost brought tears to my eyes to just see how much the teachers missed them, and them just talking with one another. It was amazing. At the same time, it's difficult, but I do think that, it's a learning curve, and everything is going to get easier as we get more as everybody gets more direction, teachers get more direction and, know what to expect as time goes on, I think it's just going to get a lot more like the norm, the new normal.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Do I see any other hands? I'm just trying to find your mute button. I'm going to mute everyone. I couldn't quite figure out whose line that was giving us noise. Do I see any other hands? Dr. Churchek, I know you mentioned that, we had committed to paying hourly wages through April 6th, and that's sort of our new start date for learning for a third trimester or whatnot. We potentially will be meeting on April 8th. Was there an action that you needed from the committee at this time, or would it make sense? I have you on mute. I'm sorry. You got caught up in the mute here. I've unmuted you now.
Okay. I mean, barring any other direction, we're going to just continue on the plan that we're on with the payroll and paying the base pay for the people, and doing our best to, continue to send things their way, fluctuate what we can send them and what we can get and what we can have them do. It's not for lack of enthusiasm on their part, so we're doing our best to kind of keep working through that. So lacking any other direction, we'll just keep staying the course. And so we can revisit that again on the 8th if you think that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Visnick.
If my memory serves me correctly, there would be a gap if we did not take that vote this evening, if we waited until the 8th, and we still haven't set our meeting for the 8th yet.
I don't know, Ms. Sherburne, when does the payroll run? Is it biweekly, weekly? Would we have a gap if we didn't extend past April 6th? We voted for just through April 6th. Do we?
Yes, we have a weekly and a biweekly payroll. So I would say that I guess it was my understanding is that as long as the governor had closed down the schools, that the school committee was okay with us running the payroll. But if it was just April 6th, then I would say that we need to have another vote.
Okay. To err on the side of caution, I'd like to make a motion that we extend the sentiments of our prior March 18th vote to encompass the May 4th date. That's the new date the governor has put forth as all schools being closed.
Second.
Okay, I hope that motion was clear enough for everyone. Are we ready to vote? Are there any more comments, concerns? It's hard to read body language over this internet. Okay, I see a couple thumbs up. So why don't we have a roll call vote to extend the direction we gave Dr. Churchek and Ms. Sherburne at our last remote participation meeting to extend the hourly payroll, and that would include the long-term subs, if I understand it correctly, as we did in our March 18th meeting. So I'll call on Ms. Coelho. Is that a yes? Thumbs up for yes, please. There we go. And Ms. Robinson? Yes, I'm reading your lips. Mr. Milady, and a thumbs up. A thumbs up. You're not muted, though, I don't think. Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and Rachel Abel, yes. Okay, so that extends through the current May 4th closure for Governor Baker's declaration that schools remain closed, that we will continue to pay our hourly and long-term subs. Okay. Dr. Churchek.
I just have a couple more things to go through quickly. I'm just giving you an update on our lunch program. We did make a change since the last time we met. We have been looking, we have 3 locations that we're running right now, and we're only running them twice a week. We did that largely to cut down on the number of contacts people were having. I mean, we're really trying to work to eliminate the need for contacts wherever we can. So we are currently serving at Beverly High School from 10:30 to 12:30 on Tuesdays and Fridays. Anyone 18 years or younger is eligible to come in. We will give them at that time 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches. And we have remote locations still at Apple Village and Holcroft Park. And the home delivery, when applicable, and those are really extenuating circumstances if people can't get, they'll have to make contact, and we'll have to figure out a way, because we don't want anyone to have a problem. But that's been a small number of people at this point. Christina Leal reported to us that they are averaging between 260 and 300 students, not lunches. So that's multiply that by 6. And that's the number of meals that we're serving. I will say this every time I even have a mention. Christina Leal is amazing, but so is the lunch staff amazing, the folks that have been coming in and making the lunches and working. We did implement and utilize some volunteers this past week. We have volunteers that are helping out at the remote sites, handing out lunches. And also we had some volunteers in the cafeteria assembling the lunches. And so I know a lot of people are anxious to volunteer. I will say that, we'll reach out to you when needed. We have a kind of a rotation going right now between the schools. So we have some teachers from each school coming on different days. So when it's your turn, your principal will reach out, because too many cooks spoil the broth. Literally, that's my phrase I'm going to use for today. And then I also wanted to share that we have been partnering with the Y, the affordable housing, and sometimes there are some leftover meals that don't get distributed, that are perishable, that won't last beyond the 3 days. And so we've been donating those lunches to the affordable housing, of the Y's affordable housing on Cabot Street. So that's just sort of a nice way we can give back to the community a little bit when we do that. So any questions on the lunch distribution? Again, thank you to everyone. Yep, Rachel?
I did just wonder how the vendors are doing with supplying, nutritious options for our kitchen. It seems that everywhere is out of stock and delayed and all that.
So Christina, I think you're on the line. You're welcome to speak to that, because I don't know the answer.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Thank you.
Excellent. We haven't had any issues yet with any deliveries. There is a potential of a milk shortage. And Desi is actually aware of this, because so many people are trying to get shelf-stable milks, and all the lunches are required to have milk. So they are aware that this is a potential problem, so they are willing to change the guidelines of what constitutes that reimbursable meal. So we may have to substitute juice for milk, but I am supposed to be getting a pretty substantial shelf-stable milk delivery on Thursday. So fingers crossed that it comes in.
Thank you. Did I see some other hands go up for questions, either for Ms. Leal, Dr. Trocheck? Okay, I'm not seeing hands now. Dr. Trocheck, was that your last slide for the extended closure? Or do you have
well, no, I just had one more.
Okay.
So when we met last, Bethany reported on, just kind of gave an explanation as some of the things that we're being cautious about regarding special education services and the remote learning situation. And as I said before, if you wait long enough, you get a new story. So Bethany's here to share with us some new guidelines. We had a conference call with Russell Johnson, who is the Department of Ed's Associate Director in charge of special education. And so Bethany's going to just sort of walk us through why we can, or what we need to know about special education in terms of the remote learning.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So at the time of the last meeting, as Dr. Trochek said, we had been given guidance that the short-term school closure was considered to be a period of non-instruction for all students. And because we were not required to provide instruction for students, we had no obligation with regard to our special education students. Since then, there has been a formal shift toward the expectation for remote learning. And so with that shift, we have now new obligations with regard to special education. And those expectations include the fact that all students must be receiving an education. The district must provide FAPE while protecting the health and safety of our students, educators, and service providers. But they were clear to outline that FAPE looks different under these extraordinary circumstances. So the implication is not that we are supposed to be providing services exactly as they are outlined on students' IEPs, because those are services that would be provided under normal educational circumstances, and these are most certainly not those typical circumstances. So they broke down service delivery for special education into two kind of buckets. The first is supports and resources, which includes providing families with strategies, assignments, projects, packets, and various resources. Again, this is an area where we were way ahead of the curve in terms of our obligation. Even though we didn't have an obligation to do this, we have done this from the beginning of the school closure. The second bucket is instruction and services, and this can include things from recorded lessons, interactive lessons through Zoom or Google Classroom or other platforms, consultation with parents, provision of home programs. And again, I think we're ahead of the curve. This is something that we're already starting to do, but over the next week, we're going to be planning for how to expand and how to better meet the needs of our students with special education needs.
All right. Any questions?
Thank you. Do committee members have any questions for Ms. Blansky? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay.
All right. And I think that's it. I think the next slide, yeah, the next slide is for Rachel. So we'll.
Okay. Okay, sure. The first agenda item that I have from the chair is that we are required to sign the North Shore Education Consortium article agreement for July 1st, 2020. And to do so, I would need the agreement of this body that we agree with the changes that were presented. In summary, the changes are outlined that they are adding the Pentucket Regional School District. We received this information in our packet from Donna Bergeron last week. They are also amending language. They've always apparently had superintendents on the board, and there was an option for a school committee representative, but that's not been the practice, and so they wanted to clean up the language. NEC has always had a superintendent-only board, but the statute had allowed for school committees to represent their member district. The current consensus of the current board members has led to positive governance, oversight, and collegial relationships amongst the North Shore districts, and therefore they request that the language be changed. And then the third item was talking about the responsibilities of those board members. They apparently do have some superintendents who have repeatedly missed meetings or caused a lack of quorum, and so they wanted to strengthen the language and put in some penalties and or allow for a non-voting designee to go if the superintendent sincerely cannot make the scheduled meetings. So that was the summary letter that we've all been able to review. I'd like to first entertain a motion that the Beverly Public School Committee apply my signature as chair as a member district to this agreement, article of agreement dated July 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Will you second, Ms. Visnick? I was making a motion, I think.
Oh, my bad. Sure, I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Visnick. Now we're open for discussion. Do we have any questions? I don't know if Dr. Churchek can provide any more detail on the work of the consortium or continued membership.
Yeah, no, I think I'm relatively new to the board. The superintendent, it's the board of superintendents. I think the biggest change was the addition of Pentucket. That was the impetus, and then they did some language changes, and then there was some question. I guess I have heard that over time they have sometimes had a difficulty to get a quorum. I have not experienced that in my year this year. It's been a very active board, and so I know that was something they put in just to make sure that they were in compliance with what they need to do as a board, so to get their business accomplished. But it's a great board. Fran Rosenberg does a great job she's the director of the North Shore Consortium, and it's very active, and it's all of our regional superintendents, and another great opportunity for us to meet and collaborate and have an impact for the students that attend that school. So. Those programs, actually.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions, concerns? Are we ready to vote? Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. I'm going to call Mayor Cahill first.
Yes.
Thank you. And next, John Mulady.
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly Ferretti.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Rachel Abel, yes. Kim Coelho. Thumbs up is a yes. Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Last but not least, Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the motion passes 7-0. I will be applying the signature, and I'll work with Ms. Bergeron to make sure this gets to the North Shore Education Consortium. Okay, our next order of business is to discuss the suspension of policy DK on signing of warrants. And just as a way of introduction, when we did our policy review work back in November of 2016, the policy subcommittee had received some advice from MASC's Mike Gilbert that the Beverly policy was actually more strict or more cumbersome than is required by Mass General Law. And we decided to keep some elements of the Beverly policy anyway. And now here we are in a situation where we want perhaps as few hands as possible touching the physical copies of our warrants. And so what I would like to propose to the school committee is that we actually use our ability to temporarily suspend our policy during this COVID-19 incident to allow for just one school committee member who we will designate as a second action to sign the warrants before they're presented to our city accountant and treasurer for payment. So the Mass General Law that's referenced in DK is actually 4156. And that law says that the school committee shall approve and transmit as often as one each month. So we, in our policy, say weekly, but as one each month. And that we may designate one member. Our current policy says by a majority of the school committee and weekly. So there's really two elements of the current policy that I would look for us to temporarily suspend. To do so, we would need a 2/3 vote of those present. We have all 7 present today. So with that said, I would entertain a motion so that we can open up some further discussion.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we suspend that policy. I'd like to put an end date on it, but maybe we want to make the language such that the end date is when school reopens. So can we make it that generic?
So suspend the policy until school reopens so that we comply with Mass General Law where there's one person at least monthly.
One signer once a month, yes, ma'am.
At least once per month, yep. Okay. Do I have a second on that? I have a second from Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Okay. Opening up for discussion, I'm not sure if Ms. Sherburne wants to talk about some of the practical issues before we vote on this motion to suspend our policy. But I think it's safe to say that most of our school and city employees are working from home and trying to limit the amount of risk that they encounter by being in our offices, in our city hall, and the like, and that the challenge with our warrants is the physicality of it. They are all invoices that are being mailed to our school district. They are opened, they are photocopied, they are signed off by a number of designees in our departments. And that if we can, in this short term until school reopens, limit our participation in the process because we can under Mass General Law, I think that is the safest option for us all. Is there other feelings on this? I think that the city employee that's receiving these would actually be picking them up from the district rather than have them go to City Hall. So we would be looking to appoint someone from the committee to actually make an appointment at the McEwen School to rendezvous with a member of our finance department to do a quick in and out. It would be just the school committee member and the employee keeping distance, reviewing the items. Are we prepared to take such an action to suspend our policy for the majority of the school committee just down to one person? It's hard to read your faces, guys. Okay, I see a couple of thumbs up. Do we have any questions, concerns on the first part of this suspension? And then we'll do the appointment of a person. Okay, I'm going to take that as we're ready to vote. Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho? Yes, thumbs up. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Rachel Abel is a yes. And Mayor Cahill?
Yes, thank you.
And who did I miss? Mr. Milady?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's passed 7-0 that one person from the school committee at least once monthly, but to be coordinated with the business department as needs. So next we need to make the designation of the person. I believe Tuesday morning is the ideal time when the packet will be at its most complete state and before the noon pickup by the city's employee. So we're looking for someone who would be willing to solely venture out to the McEwen building to rendezvous, to see the warrants and sign off on them, probably between 10 and 11 on Tuesday mornings.
I could do that, Mrs. Abel.
Okay. I was wondering if you might be willing, because I believe we have designated and appointed you for our payroll warrants as well, and perhaps we can do a twofer.
Yep, that works for me.
Okay. So I'll let you coordinate specifically with Ms. Sherburne and or one of her employees the exact timing and protocol for doing that on Tuesday mornings around 10 a.m.
Sounds good.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. And barring any other volunteers, I'll consider that a sensible choice. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Ferretti. The next item on our discussion is about fees. I think we are mostly aware of conversations on social media, questions that parents have had. Our own meeting on the 18th, we reported out a number of questions from constituents wondering what we're going to do. I think that we need to start the conversation. As Ms. Visnick pointed out, we are a committee made up of parents who have children at all different levels. And we have musicians and athletes and bus riders and all sorts of different types of fee-paying activities. My understanding of the rule of necessity is that when we're talking about a topic that affects the entire population of our district and broadly a number of students, that we need to think for ourselves whether or not we have a conflict of interest on any of the votes or outcomes that we're taking. And for that reason, I think we've all had our ethics training. We need to think to ourselves whether that there's any situation that potentially puts us in an uncomfortable situation. And if our body would need to at any point consult our legal attorney about the rule of necessity, we wouldn't simply call the rule of necessity out unless we have a particular situation. I think this topic is going to cover a lot of different areas. There's been lots of questions posed online about returning of field trip money or rebating, refunding kindergarten fees and the like. So I know, Dr. Chirocek, you've actually put together some information to help frame our conversation about what sorts of fees we have yet to collect, or what any decision that we take as a body might do to our revenue in. Thank you so much.
So we put this slide together, though, although this is not to be considered an exhaustive list of all of them, but just some that we know have been talking. And I had asked Jean to just kind of give for all of you to have a sense. So Jean, you may want to take the reins and walk everybody through what these are. And, you know, there's some numbers. Those are just to give you a sense of what we're talking about.
So what I did was on the first one is the kindergarten tuition fee. There was a question raised out on the MASBO for all the business managers. And what we are hearing is that a lot of districts are not planning on charging while the district is closed. The first number you see is $68,798 would be just till May 1st, and the $142,183 would be to the end of the year. The second one I have is the preschool tuition, same dating, $14,352, $29,661. Transportation fee, I put this question out on the listserv this morning, and most districts are saying at this time that they are not refunding, and that would be $33,990 to $70,246. With that said, on all of those, we'd have to be tracking, you know, what people have paid. So we do want people to continue paying what they owe up to this point. And we're not sure what we're going to do, if it's a refund or if we're going to be back in session, you know, when we're going to be back in session, issuing refunds, or if we want to have, if there's people that want to apply it to, I'm thinking of transportation, applying it to the next fiscal year instead of issuing checks, because that is going to be very cumbersome for us to do, because we have to create every person as being a vendor for that to actually work. The next thing I have in there is the breakfast and lunch revenues, the loss of paid meals. Obviously, that is just talking about a revenue loss. The spring sports fee does cover officials, coaching stipends, etc. But we'll need to see, you know, are we going to have any kind of sporting, you know, athletic season?
I think I heard 3 or 4 ifs and questions about if we return to school on May 4th and if we have spring sports. Before we jump to any sort of motion, I think it would behoove us to have some conversations about which fees and just the practicality of the business office being able to sort through the complexity of who's paid up to date, who's prepaid, who's on a scholarship, who has multiple fees being paid, and or what services are being delivered through Beverly Keeps Learning for our kindergarten students. as well as our music students. I'm not entirely sure what the third and fourth grader musical experience is. I know my fifth grader has had a robust and wonderful experience continuing her music education at the middle school, but I'm not sure with our earliest instrument learners, for instance, if that's practical. So I think that we have just such a wide scope here. I don't know if there's a suggestion from any of the committee members where we might want to start a conversation.
Madam President.
Ms. Visnick.
Again, this is the beginning of what I expect to be multiple very difficult conversations, but I don't believe that, especially given our conversation that we each shared earlier about how difficult it is to try to deliver or help our children participate in their online learning or their remote learning. I apologize, Dr. Chirocek, their remote learning.
We're all working on that one.
I personally have a real hard time, and I'm very far away from having a kindergartner or a preschooler, but I don't feel for the first three things on that list that we can charge, because we're not really delivering those services. And that's no offense to any one of our educators who's working so hard on the Keep Beverly Learning on that initiative. However, it just is to not physically be in the building and to not physically be, especially for preschoolers, or to not physically be on that bus. I don't think that we can really charge. I'm done.
Okay, I do have a quick question for Ms. Sherburne. You talked about the transportation fees. I'm wondering if there is an offset for the expense of our transportation. I know that we're continuing to pay hourly, and we're still using transportation to deliver our lunch program, our breakfast and lunch program. But is there an offset on fuel or on any other items that we can make it a little bit more comfortable, or am I dreaming?
So the fees that we do collect are going towards the driver salaries that we are continually paying. So that is where the budget offset goes to. But we will have reduction in fuel, obviously, because we're not running all of those buses. I don't know what that number is at this moment. It's something that I can figure out what we've paid in the last year, in the last 3 months. What it is, if it's a short duration of, we go back on May 1st, which, that could be one thing. But if it's a longer duration, that's the one that's going to be the most difficult to figure out, because there's an awful lot of variables, one ways, round trip, family max, all of those issues. So that is the one that's going to be the hardest and to calculate out.
In preparing for tonight's meeting, I think I was having, a real hard time trying to figure out how all those variables, and the fact that some people have prepaid and some people maybe owe up through the March 13th, how much it would cost our district in, sort of administrative overhead, and was considering, for the families that, really, need this to be figured out, if there could be an opt-in or opt-out way. And then you've just reminded me now about the fact that to actually cut a check to these families, we would need to create the vendor profile in the Munis system. And I wonder if tonight, hearing news out of Virginia, for instance, that they've basically called off school for the rest of the year and stay in order until June 10, and just seeing how things are changing, if we as a committee might be willing to make some sort of motion to stop people from paying from beyond the March 13th, to hopefully make it a little simpler in the end, and to delay the prorate or reimbursement until the last day of school, or until it's been determined. I feel like it's a moving target right now, and that there's just so much effort involved in calculating the dollars and cents that would be due to families who feel, that the services aren't being delivered at this time. Not to say that they don't need their money back as soon as humanly possible. But it's just such a complicated endeavor that would take a lot of resources. I just am trying to think of what the most practical way, and also just thinking about how we do all need to be careful if this has, a financial implication for ourselves, to really consider whether we should participate in a vote or in a motion. I'll just say I don't feel that I have a conflict of interest. My only payment to the district was for a student activity fee for the Nature's Classroom, and my understanding that it's already been determined by the administration that refunds to the extent possible are being given for all field trips, including Nature's Classroom. My students walk to school and again are in the middle school, so music is included. So I do feel comfortable being able to make a motion, but I want to respect the fact that this could potentially be difficult for members. I think we all know what's right. It's just a matter of potentially figuring out what's the best way to orchestrate and deal with the variables of unknown, whether we return to school. I mean, we're returning May 4th. Let's all keep that in mind and make a mental pavement that we will return to good health and be safe and out of the woods, but recognizing that this is an exercise that we wouldn't want to have the district do twice or more.
Ms. Freddie wishes to speak.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't quite see your hand there. There we go. Go ahead, Ms. Freddie.
That's okay. Thank you. Well, I will disclose that I am one of the many parents who have paid a fee for spring sports for one of my children, but I have heard from a lot of parents who also are concerned about the fees they've paid on two platforms, one being reimbursement if the season is not able to unfold, obviously. But the other part where I'm hearing from a lot of people actually is if we do return and some of these seasons are facilitated in a partial way, they have concerns about wanting their children to participate, given that we're so fresh coming off of this and the unknown and not, sure, do you want your child out on a field, it playing a sport that, kids playing sports, they're together, close quarters. And so some parents are feeling that even if there is some type of partial season that they may not want, they may not want their child to participate, and what the option for a fee reimbursement would be in that case too.
Ms. Coelho wishes to speak.
I see you, Ms. Coelho. You're on mute. Can you unmute yourself, or do you need me to?
I think I did it.
Thank you. You did.
Yes. Okay. So just like Miss Freddie, I have paid for spring soccer for my kindergartner, but I have also received communication from the soccer saying that, they might delay the season to the summer, depending on how everything happens, or that we would get a credit for the following spring if we wanted to, or we could outright ask for a refund. So that is also an option too, that parents could just, if they can't play for the spring, they could use it for the following spring.
So for our youth sports, those are handled outside of the district, but it does raise a valid point about, just rolling it forward. I think that's one of the options that Ms. Sherburne was trying to get at, rather than issuing checks, have a credit on different family accounts.
Rachel, can I just jump in here for a minute? As far as the athletics is concerned, I have spoken to Linda Zamboris, the bookkeeper for athletics. If anybody sent in a check, those checks have been held. We have not put them through the bank right now until we kind of figure out what's going on. The only refunds that we would have to issue would be anybody that made an online payment. And I believe she told me that was about $33,000 that we had received. So that is one avenue that we're doing. We're not depositing the live checks at this moment. And then if we have to do a refund because we don't have a season, then again, we'd have to go through and make those people a vendor.
Ms. Sherburne, maybe while you're on the line, you can let folks know that, or actually, maybe I will just say that in warrants, occasionally, if someone has an injury or they're ineligible to play or they're cut from a team anyway, we're pretty good about returning sports fees for people who don't end up playing. Do you think that we could amend any of our procedures to make sure that that happens, to Ms. Ferretti's question about what if there isn't a season but parents don't feel comfortable?
I would wonder if Mr. Keefe is still online with us, because he knows better when they actually do refunds than I do.
Okay, Mr. Keefe, if you're on the line.
He is.
He is. I'm unmuting your line. Don't say anything unless you recognize you're unmuted now, Mr. Keefe.
How you doing?
Hi there. Thank you.
The way the rule actually reads is, as long as the student athlete has not played in a contest, then they are refunded. So in that situation, if a parent all of a sudden doesn't want their son or their daughter to play, as long as they haven't played in the game, not a problem. But I mean, obviously we'd be, willing to do whatever you folks want us to do.
That seems reasonable.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Bisnick.
I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent for us to take these items somewhat separately in order to lessen the potential conflict of interest. So, for instance, if we just considered the tuition fees, the first two bullets on the slide, then those of us with kindergartners or preschoolers could recuse themselves from that vote, but we'd still have enough of a majority to take the vote, and so on down the line. So, for instance, when we got to the spring sports fee, the few of us with high schoolers could recuse ourselves from that vote.
I would be game for that. I have, expressed my desire to keep some flexibility so that we don't have to do the exercise twice. So I have a motion in mind, but I would I would welcome wordsmithing as we go along.
I will maybe suggest that you make that motion, but just in clumps.
Okay. So I make a motion that the Beverly Public School Committee direct our superintendent and the business office to consider prorated or rebated fees for full-day kindergarten and preschool for the time period of March 14th, 2020 until the end of school. Based on the number of days less from the 180 scheduled days. I'm sorry, someone's line is on. Just a second. There we go. Does that make sense? So we have 180 days. We got to a certain point by the 13th of March. We'll have an end of school. And so there will be some number of days out of 180 days that aren't served. And that would be the basis for the business office to prorate.
Yeah, Rachel, we were on the 108. We finished the 118th day is what I calculated out.
Okay.
And what I just want to make sure is that if we do come back into session, that I am hoping, I have my fingers crossed that we're back in session. So can we just say be prorated while school closure, not to the end of the year?
Okay, sure.
If we do go back in full, we do want to be able to collect fees on that.
Okay, for school closure days. Okay, so So motion by the Beverly Public School Committee to direct the superintendent and the business office to address prorated or rebate fees for full-day kindergarten and preschool for the school closure days based on our 180 calendar day, to be calculated at the close of school. I mean, that's one element. I don't want to predict the future, but what if we reopen and reclose and, you know, for the school closure days until the end of school? I mean, that's the piece of it. I don't want you to have to figure it out if we reopen and then close again. But I also don't want to end load it too much because I think our last day of school is pretty close to the end of the bookkeeping year as well.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, if we find that, you know, May 15th, they're saying that we're not coming back, then by all means, we would start at that point. So whenever it is determined that we're not coming back this fiscal year.
Okay.
And then we do need a turnaround time. And like you said, you know, we could be paying things back. You know, what happens in this case is people aren't going to be making their payments. So there's really not going to be as many refunds in that area. Mm-hmm. It's just the people that have already paid. Mm-hmm. But there's many people that haven't paid. So we do want the people that owe us money from before we close, that we do need to collect those funds because we're not going to be able to collect. And we're still, you know, paying out the salaries that are charged to that account.
Right. To ease the burden, do we need to add a dependent clause that says families may opt out of a rebate by notifying the business office? Or I can appreciate what a difficult task it is to enter a Munis account for each family that might be affected, and you know, potentially, you know, these are lower dollar amounts of refunds for calculating on the days.
Right. We do have probably, I think, approximately 12 people that have paid through the fiscal year. Mm-hmm. So that would be April, May, June. So it could be the upwards of $600 if they were full pay. Mm-hmm. But if they receive 50% off, then the number goes down.
That's right. I'm forgetting that our kindergarten class, we only have 100 and something full pay students, but we also we have some scholarship students. So potentially the work is a little less in this area.
Yes, it's not the 400 students that we have, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I need to restate the motion for the camera.
Because I think, yeah.
And for Ms. Bergeron, who is taking our minutes right now. So a motion for the Beverly Public School Committee to advise the superintendent and business office to address prorated and rebated fees prepaid for full-day kindergarten and preschool for days of closure in the, we'll just say in the FY20 school year.
Madam President, would you like a second?
Yes, please.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Might we want to or need to amend that for the type of closure, because I don't think we want to rebate people based on the wind days or whatever kind of quote unquote snow days we had.
Yeah, right. Okay. So for the closure for the response to COVID-19.
I'll second that.
Okay.
We good now?
I think so. And we'll just ask kindly that any parents that want to opt out and want to make it easier on us, just let us know. But okay, so I think we have a motion with the amendment that these are closures for the response to COVID-19. Do I see some hands for comments or questions? Okay, are we ready to do a roll call vote for the full day kindergarten and pre-K prorated rebate orchestrated by the superintendent in the business office for closure days in response to COVID-19 for those programs that were prepaid by families. Okay. Keep a log here. We'll go with
Kim has a
Kim has a hand up. Go ahead, Kim. Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to find you to unmute you. Unless you can unmute yourself.
My question wasn't about the kindergarten fees. It was about another fee. So
Okay.
I can wait till
Okay.
after.
Thank you. Actually, why don't we call on you right now? Did you wish to vote on this fee?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Karen Robinson? Yes, I'm reading your lips. John Mulady?
I'm going to abstain because my son Teddy's in kindergarten.
Thank you. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
Thank you. Rachel Abel, yes. Lorinda Bisnick? And Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So with 6 votes in the affirmative and 1 abstention, the direction is given to the superintendent in the business office to apply a prorated rebate to full day and pre-K fees paid in advance for the closure days in response to the COVID-19 for FY20 school year.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
so now that we already voted on that, Jean said something about not collecting fees as we roll forward, but we didn't actually explicitly mention that.
Right. I think that's a separate issue, and I didn't want to make it more complicated. But do we as a school committee want to give direction to the superintendent in the business office to advise parents not to prepay any further until we know if school will return to session, and also give them the teeth they need to collect for any outstanding balances that were overdue as of the 13th? I mean,
That is the question that we are getting from the people is, do I have to continue paying? So I'm assuming at this point they can hold off on paying 1 month. If we're back in May 4th, then, you know, they only had that one little window there. But that is the question we're getting. Based on what you voted, I'm assuming that they do not have to pay. However, if we're back on May 4th, then they do have to pay from May 4th, May to June.
right. Do we want any potential parents getting creative and deducting half of March from any payments? Like, how should we advise parents that perhaps are expecting rebates?
So could we just say to suspend preschool and kindergarten payments and await further? We'll give them some guidance. School reopen.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
So we have a motion on the table to suspend full day kindergarten and pre-K kindergarten payments awaiting further guidance on the school closure in response to COVID-19. We have a motion. Do I have a second? And we have a second from Ms. Coelho. Thank you. Do we have any more questions or comments on this motion? Okay, we'll do another roll call vote, and I'll start with Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
And Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ferretti.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick.
Yes.
Mr. Mulady.
Yes.
Okay, and Mayor Cahill.
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. The motion passes 7-0 to suspend payments for full day kindergarten pre-K and await further guidance in relation to the closure for COVID-19. Okay.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Visnick.
can we just repeat those same 2 motions for the bus? Can you reiterate, can you restate them but change out kindergarten for transportation? Can I say I want to make a motion with that substitution? Yes, those fingers, yes.
Yes. So we have a motion to direct the superintendent and the business office to address prorated and rebated transportation fees paid for the school closure days in response to COVID-19. What am I forgetting? For the FY20 school year? To the degree they were prepaid.
Right. We could, I don't know, Sue, do you think, or Dr. Trojek, I apologize, or Jean, do you think it makes sense to combine the two motions into one? We'll consider a rebate and stop collecting moving forward until we have further direction?
So the only thing with the transportation is that most people have already paid that forward. It's just who has not made a payment that's past due. So there are some people that are past due. But those were the kindergarten and the preschool are on a monthly basis. The transportation is payment plans. I think it's 2 payments that we usually make. However, those payments have already come in. It's just what's outstanding. So that one is going to be the harder one to calculate, the rebates.
So I think on the transportation, I don't know that we need to decide tonight. I'd like to investigate or explore options of how to do that without that nightmare of accounting and whether it's and I don't know, I don't even want to make suggestions right now. I have some things in my head, but I'm thinking maybe we do nothing on the transportation fee right now. I mean, we're not collecting more money on it. So maybe we just wait and come up with another proposal as we go forward, if that's what's necessary, when we know what the duration is. Because if it's only 15 days, if it's only 35 days, it's going to make a big difference. So that's an accounting nightmare. And so let's maybe come up with a different proposal.
Okay. Ms. Brady, I saw a hand.
Yeah, I was just, if we were going to engage in discussion, just kind of take a quick tally on how many of us utilize the transportation for our kids. And if we don't have enough to have a full discussion and a vote, then we would do the rule of necessity. I know I don't use transportation, and I don't think you do, Mrs. Adebal.
No, I think there's only potentially one person that has some transportation, or 2 people. And the rule of necessity would require us to actually file with the ethics and go through a whole process. I don't think we would need to do that on this. I think we have a majority that would not.
Okay. I wasn't sure how many people utilize the transportation.
I do not.
Sure.
And Ms. Coelho?
My kindergartner utilizes transportation, but we don't pay because we're outside that 2 mile, so it's included.
Right. And I was going to say through 6th grade, and there's so many parameters that I don't know that we have many. But I think Dr. Trocek's point is well taken, that this isn't a continuing fee collection, and certainly the amount of dollars is a little bit less. So if we could postpone this and get a recommendation once we know with a little more certainty what the rest of our school year looks like. So can we table this? Do I have a head nod? Or we? Yeah. Okay. And so that leaves the athletic fees. I think Mr. Keefe aptly pointed out that our rules are that, prior to playing in the first game, parents would have the option to get a refund, and we're still waiting to see if we have a season. So potentially, certainly I was surprised the $33,000 that Ms. Sherburne reported is a lot of money for people that have played for the spring season. But I think that, again, the right thing will be done once we know more. So unless there's someone that wants to make a suggestion that we take action on the athletic fees tonight, I'll let that one sit on the table.
Madam President?
Yes.
Given that some people might be in a financial hardship and those couple $100 may make a significant difference, I do expect, or I could anticipate, that some people would want to ask for a refund now. They may either need that money in the short term, or they may decide that their child is not going to get to play sports this spring, even if we have a season, because of their financial situation. So I think that we need to put something in there where if somebody needs a refund now because of their finances, they can ask for it.
And I think that would always be the case. So I think that, they can make that request. I'm not really sure what that does in terms of, I think that's something that you can do remotely, Jean. I'm not sure.
That request would have to go through Mr. Keefe and Linda Zamboris in the athletics department because they know who has paid. But that would be something that we would need their information, so that we'd have to set them up as a vendor. So that would be our staff coming in. We do have a skeleton crew coming in to run the warrant, so Bobby Aiken could set people up as vendors so that Linda can do it remotely, issue refunds.
Okay.
And then the checks would come into us at...
So they would make their request to Mr. Keefe and Ms. Zamboris, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Rachel, Mr. Cahill would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherburne. I just wanted to ask on this particular one, do we really need any action? Isn't it standard fare that if somebody changes their mind before the season starts and decides that their child won't play, that you just would reimburse?
Yes, I thought we're just telling them where to make that request to. So they can make that request in. And again, if the season doesn't run, then they won't have played in their first game. So everybody would be eligible for the for that refund.
I do wonder, as a person who balances her checkbook regularly, if we should notify the parents who paid by check that have their checks being held, that they are not intending to be deposited. I think that information might be helpful, but then we also don't want to surprise them by suddenly cashing them all. Is that something that Ms. Zamboris has a record of from remote locations that you communicate?
I would ask Mr. Keefe to come on to talk about that.
Mr. Keefe, I've unmuted your line if you'd like to address the question as to what information Ms. Zamboris has available as to which checks she's been holding from parents who've prepaid for spring.
We have all that information in the office. And if those parents just send Linda or myself an email, we can make that happen. That's not a big deal. That's kind of standard procedure anyways. That happens all the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I think you have direction there. And I'm sorry, I just unmuted someone else's line. Sorry. Yeah, the alphabetical order changes as people start talking, and I apologize. Okay.
So not on the list, but one other thing I just want to say, and for the millions of viewers that we have, I'm sure by now we don't have as many viewers, but I've gotten a lot of questions about the laptop one-to-one payment. So that is a payment for next year that they're typically were due. The date has been extended to June 1st. So parents have been asking, should I be paying my laptop deposit? And we changed it on the website to let everyone know that that's now not due until June 1st. And that may even, depending because of the closure and the ability to manage that, that's delayed too. So just so you know, that's for next year.
Okay.
And the only thing that's kind of on the docket that we have really is the coaches' stipends, which are aligned with the fees, which are also aligned with coaching during the season. So I think I will, the docket, maybe we can take that up at the next meeting, but be thinking about that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chirocek. Did the committee have any other concerns related to fees that we should be addressing this evening? I have one more agenda item, and that's talking about rescheduling of our joint council meeting, our school committee retreat, and then also confirming the availability for a regularly scheduled school committee meeting on April 8th. I was going to come tonight with some suggestions about some dates that we might want to consider for some of our planned meetings. However, as the news was coming in before I dialed in, it does seem like we may be in for a longer ride here. I wonder, rather than waiting to return to normal, if there's any appetite or interest to continue remote participation for our charter required joint council meeting, and or the school committee retreat for training, norms and protocols, and the other topics that we felt would be important. This is really an opportunity for all of us to sort of put our preferences out there. I like to keep things uncomplex. That used to be my motto. Ms. Ferretti, go ahead.
I would just, if I put my thoughts in the ring, I would say wait until, at least for the retreat part, wait until we can do that in person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that doing it remotely might defeat the purpose of kind of what we're getting together for.
Mm-hmm.
Just my 2 cents.
Yep. Ms. Visnick?
That relative to the joint meeting, the city might appreciate seeing and or hearing from all of us, but I have to imagine that the agenda and what they'd like to hear is different than what you and President Guanci had perhaps originally planned.
Correct.
It's almost like a state of the city, and I understand that Mayor Cahill just gave one of those recently.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think that more communication in time of social distancing, which has an incredible potential to be social isolation, is a wonderful thing. And seeing faces instead of just being dialed in and seeing a name on the screen
mm-hmm.
helps to reconnect us. And I think that we've all expressed this evening that there's a lot of need for that right now. To that extent, I think if we could have our joint meeting, if we could do it remotely, if we could, and I say we, but that's really on you and President Guanci, re-examine the agenda of what would be covered in that meeting, I think that would be a useful thing. I think that would be very useful for our community.
Thank you. Do we have other committee members that also agree that perhaps the joint committee is something that you'd like me to explore with President Guanci to see if we could host it remotely rather than wait for return to normal? Show of hands, are we interested? Well, yeah.
I think that these remote meetings obviously serve a purpose and they're great, but if the option is there to get that in-person meeting,
Mm-hmm.
And we won't know, it's a wait and see game. I don't know if I want to decide that this evening.
Okay.
Because I would prefer an in-person for both that and the retreat. But again, just my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, we could leave it this evening that I can talk to President Guanci. Oh, Mayor Cahill, you want to say something?
Sure, if you don't mind, Madam President. Thank you. I think we're all kind of grappling with, is it best to, it's always best to be in person, right? But we can't at the moment. One of the things is that we don't, in a best case, it'll be early May before we can talk about being together in the same place. Hopefully the state legislature is going to be able to sort out how to begin their budget process. But I have a sense that it may end up being a more condensed, well, we'll see. Typically by the last week in April, the House is debating their budget, and, the Senate typically scheduled for the third week in May. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'll go along either way at this point. I mean, getting together sometime during the month of April where it would need to be remote, I'd support that. I'd also support a later conversation. I guess you and Council President kind of put your heads together, and that is what I'd follow.
Rachel, you're muted.
I sound much better muted. Trust me. I was just reiterating that why don't I talk with President Guanci to get his sentiments on this remote meeting versus waiting for real life again on that front. Because certainly, the agenda would need to be revisited. why don't we then just agree on our next meeting as a school committee? We have April 8th planned as a regular school committee. Is there any objection to keeping that date and time of 7 p.m., just changing our location to remote, considering that it's inside this stay-at-home period? I'll do a straw poll. I'm seeing Ms. Ferretti's agreeing, Ms. Visnick, Mr. Milady, Ms. Robinson, Ms. Coelho. I'll give it a thumbs up. And Mayor Cahill, I hope April 8th we'll be able to have you join us again on a remote meeting. Okay, we will work to have our agenda pulled together for that meeting. We left a few items on the table. We hope to have more information by that point as well. We also need to revisit some of the regular business that we conduct to make sure that we're taking care of business as well. Dr. Churchak, do you have anything else in closing? I think that brings us to the end of our...
No, thank you very much, everybody, for all your work. And I think these decisions that we are coming up against, we're going to have a few more that we have to make as we go along. But I appreciate the reflection that you all gave to everything. And I'm sure our families are, relieved to know at least that the tuition fees are going to be prorated. I've had a lot of feedback from that from the families. So I appreciate that consideration for them.
Okay, well, with that, I thank everyone, including the administrators, for dialing in as well and spending a considerable amount of time with us this evening. Again, this has been recorded. We will endeavor to have the publication up on the website. If you want to direct any constituents to the recording, it will be up as soon as humanly possible. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, I heard a so moved from Ms. Visnick. Was there a second? Second with Ms. Coelho, okay. And by roll call vote, Mayor Cahill?
Yes, and thanks everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Ferretti?
Yes.
And Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Yes. You guys are getting fast on the unmute. Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, and be well, everyone.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Milady?
Yes.
Okay. I count myself as a yes. And Ms. Visnick?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The Beverly School Committee is now adjourned. The time is, I couldn't believe it, 9:47.
Hey, we would have beat the lights if we were at the middle school.
At the middle school. Thank you all again. And be well. Wash your hands. Stay home.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Good night.